right. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today for this Tynes webinar on security automation for academic institutions. My name is Kevin Davis. I'm the sales engineer here at Tynes. And with me, I have Will Hedglon from Broad Institute. Will, do you want to say hi?
Hi, yeah, my name is Will Hedglon, and I'm with the Broad Institute of MIT and Harvard.
Awesome. Really excited for everyone to join us today. So with that, we'll dive right into it. So to give a high-level summary on today's presentation, really what we wanted to talk about was how much of today's IT and tech ops work is manual, it's repetitive, and at times it's error-prone. And Tynes provides the way for an innovative automation platform that allows and enables security teams to automate any manual workflow that they run into on a daily basis, and things that they're ultimately looking to offload from their frontline analysts to a software solution like Tynes. Well, I don't know if you have anything in particular that you can speak to in this part, but would love to get your thoughts on some of the challenges that you and your team are facing and how Tynes has helped in that respect.
Yeah, for sure. As an academic focused organization like the Broad, we end up with all sorts of pockets of information about our systems, and trying to determine a system flow or the risk of any particular system that throws an alert or has some threat takes a lot of time and effort, because information about the system and the network and the people that use the system are sort of scattered all over our infrastructure. So Tynes is a great way to go harvest all that information in an automated way, so that our analysts get really good actionable information. And we're even getting to the point where we can send some of that information to non-InfoSec teams to go remediate the threats or the vulnerabilities.
Awesome. Thank you. And that is a great segue into some of the things that we talk about here at Tynes, where it's too much work, where 79% of security teams are overwhelmed with the volume of alerts, as well as the high false positive rate from those alerts as well. Not enough staff or resources to maintain and take care of the increasing potential threats or known threats or new threats that are coming in. And then inevitably incidents that do occur. And around the world, everyone's seeing an average cost per breach of at least $4 million. And some of that's because of bespoke software required to detect and prevent incidents. And it just really takes too long to build. And I think that's really where Tynes shows its value and its power is, as long as there's a REST API or endpoint that Tynes can connect to, then we can go ahead and we can automate any process or workflow that's being handled manually today. Well, what first interested you about Tynes?
Yeah, I think the flexibility that you just touched on was really key for us. We've got all sorts of technology, from super new, cutting edge, cloud first AI stuff to old on-prem servers and lab equipment and everything in between. So the flexibility to be able to interact with all different types of technologies was super duper interesting and important for us.
Awesome. And I think that really kind of talks to some of the differences of Tynes compared to some of the other solutions out there, where we're laser focused on workflow automation and automation in general, whether it's what we go to market with for security, or even just onboarding and offboarding employees. And as we move into the more broader automation landscape, but there's no chat, there's no threat intel within Tynes, there's no ticket management system, again, because with that flexibility that I had mentioned and Will was elaborating more on, we have the ability to connect with any tool, any platform that's out there via those different actions that we'll talk about in a few minutes. And really the usability, the platform was designed to be used by teams on the front lines. So not just developers, not just engineers, and that's really the benefit of the low code, no code solution that Tynes provides. So with that, there's generally 9 use cases that we go after. Any one of these is a great jumping off point. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the GCP health analytics that Will and his team are doing, but really what we're going to focus on today is the CISA alerts and what we're doing with those in this demonstration. But Will would really love to understand your approach to that before Tines and how Tines has helped propel that and make it more of that automated workflow as opposed to a manual process to go and get those alerts and update systems.
Totally, yeah. Let's start with the GCP workflow. So pre-Tines, we had a very manual, team resource intensive workflow to get an initial alert from Google's Cloud Security Command Center that gave us some initial information about the alert. For example, somebody just made a bucket public. My team then spent a bunch of time enriching that information to figure out who actually flipped the bit to make the bucket public, and which team is that person on, and who's that person's manager, and all this important enriching data. Then we would create a JIRA ticket and go find the right outreach communications to talk to the user to understand why they made the bucket public, and then wrangle remediation. Is it intentionally public? If so, great, we've got a workflow for that. Was it an accidental thing and the bucket should no longer be public? Cool, we've got a process for that. So each step took some manual intervention, creating JIRA tickets, sending emails to users. So it took a whole lot of time and it caused the turnaround time to be measured on the order of weeks and sometimes even months. And then post-Tines, we just automate that all away, and users that flip a bucket to be public get a nice little Slack message within seconds of them doing that, to do that quick sanity check, quick press a few buttons in Slack to either remediate, make the bucket not public, or let us know that it was intentional and it should stay public. So truly, we went from weeks to close out public bucket specific events to like seconds and almost no interaction from my team. So that's been a important initial win for us. On the US CERT alert side, all of the various IT operational teams get alerts from all the various vendors and government agencies saying, hey, there's this new vuln out there or this new threat out there. Each team was kind of making a best effort to respond to those alerts. And some of the teams were doing great and others just didn't have time to get some of the important analysis work done. So we've used Tines to sort of start to centralize that alerting onto one JIRA board is the system we happen to be using for tracking. We use Tines to ingest the alerts, parse them out so we know which technologies or software is involved, send the right team the right Slack message so they get a little bit of context about the alert. And we're over time building towards automated responses. So the various teams can just click on a button and say, yep, this is done, auto close out the JIRA ticket, or click another button in Slack. And if they need deeper engagement from IT support. So Tines is really critical there to enrich the information so that non-InfoSec IT teams have context and understanding of the alert. And so we deliver the right alert to the right people on the right teams.
That's awesome. And I'm sure the added value with the enrichment within the ticket is, I'm sure, adding additional context and insight into what to actually do and who to reach out to should you need that additional support and manpower.
Yep, exactly so.
Awesome. So as part of the Tines architecture in the platform, I had mentioned actions earlier, and actions are really the building blocks to automating and building these stories that Will and his team have in place today. And one of the particular stories that we'll walk through today with these US CERT alerts. On top of that, they'll perform specific tasks. There's only 7 of these action types. And then the widgets allow for easier action configuration. These actions emit events, and any combination of actions will ultimately create that story for you. And then from there, those events are sent between actions as structured JSON. So it's easy to capture, understand the information, and then send that event information down to additional actions to continue to perform new tasks, either in other systems or within Tines itself. Some of the transform actions or trigger actions that we'll walk through. But then from there, those stories, again, they're a collection of actions working together, and those pre-configured stories ultimately help us understand and share different ways to approach the automation, but also to build out a more collaborative environment to streamline workflow automation around alert consolidation and management, but also, again, as Will was describing, allowing the team to be more nimble and agile on responding to and taking action on those alerts. Will, could you walk us through your process and approach before Tines? And I know you had alluded to it a little bit before, but maybe some of the post Tines automation and how that's helped your team.
Sure. Yeah. So post Tines, I'll sort of touch on both workflows. So post Tines on the Google Security Command Center side, we built out a bunch of workflows that start with that, ingesting the alert from the Google tool. We explode the information so we understand the various Google provided bits of information. And then based on the type of alert or the projects the alert is thrown within, we then go do some data enrichment, pulling information from various separate information sources. And that was the thing that took a lot of time pre-Tines, is finding the right information source, copy pasting all the things in, doing the right database lookups or BigQuery searches. With Tines, we just go harvest all that information automatically, slap it together into one nice, pretty formatted JSON, and then we can go do our Slack alerting and outreach to talk directly to end users and say, hey, we saw this thing happen in your particular Google project, or we saw you as the actor take this specific action. Was this intentional? Was this unintentional? Here's the risk associated with the particular action you're taking. Let's work together to mitigate this risk and make it safer for you. So that enrichment is super helpful, so we get the right information to the right user super duper quickly, which is great because we reduce risk quickly, which is always a good thing. But we also catch users occasionally, like midstream or mid-thinking, so their brains are already oriented to be in the right space to understand the change they just made. And if they need to undo that change or back out, it's a lot simpler to do it 5 minutes after they applied the change versus 5 days or a week later. So that's super duper helpful to be able to be responsive very, very quickly. Very similar on the US CERT side. So being able to harvest the right information from a bunch of pockets of separate, disparate data sources is super duper useful. We've gotten to the point where for some types of US CERT alerts, the InfoSec team never even sees the ticket that's created in JIRA. If we can tease out the right information from the US CERT alert and enrich the JIRA ticket well enough, we just send it right to our endpoint operations team or our server operations team, and they put their response right in the JIRA ticket. So everyone's aware of where we are on these various alerts, the current state. We don't have to bug people and get updates and see where they are. Everything's just nicely neat in this one little JIRA board for us. And Tines is that ingest point to make sure that the incoming information is super enriched and super actionable.
Awesome. Great. And along with the Broad Institute, these are some of the other customers that Tines works with to help do exactly something similar, if not very the same as to what Will and his team at the Broad is doing. So definitely excited to be working with Will and his team, as well as our other customers, and learning from them on how they're approaching automation and how Tines is playing an impact in that. So now we'll dive into the actual demo itself, and we'll move directly into the Tines platform. So before we dive into the story, just some high-level walkthrough on Tines itself. So this first part that I'm in is the dashboard. And the dashboard is going to walk us through and give us high-level insight on the number of actions used versus allocated, the number of events that have been executed and run today versus, again, the total that are available to us. Then over here, we see our most active stories, and then our most active actions as well. Again, those actions are the building blocks of the Tines stories. From there, we have our drafts folder. We can have and put stories into those drafts. We also have credentials. So that way, if we want to store information to different systems, whether it's via text or in any of the other types that are available, web tokens, OAuth, AWS, so on and so forth. We can add that information in here and then call it globally or make it very specific to one particular team. On top of that, we have the ability to store resources within Tines as well. Very similar thought process around adding and reusing usernames in here, URLs, so that way we're not hard coding and adding that stuff directly into the builder and then making it visible to users or teams that might not necessarily need that type of visibility. Well, is there an approach that you and your team take to the credentials and the resources when using Time?
Yeah, the credentials and resources are super duper useful, especially the credentials. Like it's really well done, really well thought out. We feel very comfortable putting sensitive, important credentials in here. The other piece we like is the story breakout is very useful for us. We've got a prod space and a test space, so just having that flexibility to shape or sort your workflows is a small thing, but very, very useful for us.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know for me, it helps me keep the demos and the different stories that I want to tell very consolidated, but also easy to go and capture and grab whenever I need to.
Yeah.
Awesome. So with that, we'll dive into the story itself. So this is the main storyboard within Tines for this scenario that we're walking through with the US CISA alerts or CERT alerts. So in here on the left-hand side, we have, again, those 7 actions, and any combination of those actions will ultimately go ahead and create this story for us. We have the ability to drag and drop over annotations, and some annotations can be very simple, like the one I have here, or we can go through and we can create very extensive steps and understanding and documentation on each flow and different part of the story itself. So new users 2 times or new folks being introduced to a story can understand immediately what's going on within that. And then we also have the ability to add links directly into the Tines or the annotations itself. This one in particular is bringing us directly to those CISA alerts that we're going to be referencing during today's call. So wanted to at least point that out. Will, are you using annotations within your stories?
We do. We started using annotations somewhat recently, and they're very helpful. Having I don't know if you could call this a GUI necessarily, but being able to structure your stories in a visual medium so anyone can sort of see the flow and the if-then conditional statements and have nice little annotations to describe what the breakout points are and what the decision points are is super duper valuable.
Awesome. Great. So with that, we'll go ahead and we'll actually run this story here. So we're going to start with this HTTP action. I'm doing something very similar to how Will and his team approach it. They're a little bit more sophisticated. They're using email to go ahead, or this IMAP action that I'll drag and drop over to monitor an inbox and do some filtering on some specific tags based off of the folders that they're using. Will, I don't know if you want to talk through that process for us.
Yeah, sure. So our thinking around that was we wanted to start with the CISA alerts because they're just a good general source of this type of alerting. But over time, we want to expand into other source threat intel feeds. Red Hat has a feed, Microsoft has a feed, and email's a pretty good standard way as an initial ingest point. So that's why we went with, using Tines to listen to a particular Gmail account. To listen for emails as they come in, explode them out, and then do regexing and parsing based on the content of the email.
Awesome. So with this particular story, I'm going to go ahead and start with the RSS feed itself. So I just added the CISA alert or US CERT CISA URL directly in here, and just doing a simple GET request. So if I go ahead and click run, and we'll start to see all these different bubbles populate, and I just received a Slack message. So really the approach that I'm taking is to have this run once and go ahead and capture that information. Part of the power of Tines is, you don't need to manually log in every single day to run this story and start with this initial request. We can go ahead and define a schedule here, and we can have it run every single day. We can have it run every hour, every minute, depending on the way and frequency in which you want to go ahead and check these stories and those different sources that you're working with. you have the ability to customize and make that flexible for yourself. And also the ability to monitor actions. So if we don't see anything for a couple of days, a couple of weeks, we can add that context in here. We can proactively notify one or many recipients that may maintain and own this story to let them know that we just haven't seen any events and maybe something had changed on an endpoint, or just no alerts have been emitted for that particular time period. And it's just a good way to continuously and proactively check against anything that might potentially be going on. Will, do you have schedules going on today within your stories?
We actually tend to not use schedule. Most of our ingest into Tines is just a listener, and alerts are either coming from incoming emails or pub subs that are throwing alerts from Google. So we don't use scheduling very much.
Interesting. Very cool. Well, over here, again, we just ran this initial request. So let's take a look at what we actually have going on. So if I drill into my events, we'll see one of my most recent events here. And then at that point, I can either expand this into a new tab in my browser and then go through and read all the information that's come back this way, or I can just simply use the builder in Tines here. And I can start to drill into the different JSON fields and values and then understand exactly what's being sent back to me. The nice part about all the requests that Tines is making and the information we're gathering, we're pulling back all of the fields and all of the values. So that way they can all be used later on down the road to interact with and emit events to different actions to be used for, as Will was mentioning, enriching tickets. We saw and heard a Slack message, so we'll drill into that. But from there, we can go and we can take a look at all the information, the description, and then again, start to use this information downstream to build out and effectively create an automation story that's useful and repeatable and certainly scalable for the teams that we're working with. So in here, in one of the particular actions, I've gone ahead and I've extracted this URL. And well, I know you guys are doing something similar. How's it been working with a lot of the public templates that we have available? Has it increased efficiency and speed as you go and build these stories out?
Yeah, the public templates are good. The G Suite ones were especially useful for us for a variety of reasons. Getting Tines and G Suite talking to each other was sort of one of our initial test cases. So y'all had good documentation on G Suite, and the pre-built templates helped us get up to speed and understand how Tines could work for us.
Awesome. And it's very simple too, as you're seeing, drag and drop over different actions, but to connect actions together, we really just click this arrow here and drag and drop it over to the action that we want to connect those workflows up to. And then at that point within this builder, we can use the builder itself, or if we're really good at JSON and already have something pre-built that we want to just copy and paste in, we can do that. But as we were referencing these JSON paths, once we go ahead and do that initial run and get the information back from the endpoint that we want to call, we can go ahead and start to populate in the different information that we want to parse out. And then in this particular one, use the regex to parse that data and extract certain URL information. So if we go in here, we can take a look at this link. And then if we want to use that, we can go ahead and just have that body available. The nice part is we always have configuration and documentation ready and directly in the UI, so users can have immediate validation or just insight on how they're working with and building out the different actions within the different JSON paths within the actions themselves to be used. And then again, we have that documentation button right there, so we can understand exactly what we're working with, and then it'll bring us to that certain action that we've started to build out. So if we wanted to test this immediately, and as we go through and build the story, we can start to, again, have that validation, make sure we're capturing the correct information. We can see here, it's already parsed out one URL. There's only one that's available, but it's actually gone ahead and immediately done that for us. We didn't need to write any regex. We didn't have to go to any sites to understand which regex to write and how to properly parse it. It was immediately there. And then we put it into a nice new field called URLs. And that's exactly what we're doing down here in this extract URL using regex. And then we're going down a couple of different paths. One is to explode all of the URLs that were being sent. So in this particular case, we're looking at an individual URL. This extracted about 39 or 30 URLs at that point. So what I'm going to do is tie this up to a request action that's actually going to go and parse those URLs at iocparser.com and get some additional information. Now, even though right here it says it's not working, the nice part about Tines is we have, again, validation immediately in here to understand why we received that 400 error. It looks like it's just a malformed or incorrectly formatted URL. But over here in my events section, we still have different events within the past 6 minutes that we were working with. So we can see exactly what information is being sent back to us from IOC Parser now, and take a look at not only the meta information, but also the data itself, and take a look at any file hash information, any SHA-256 information, any CVEs, and we can continue to toggle back and forth from these events just by hitting the left and the right arrow to see what information is useful and available to us. So here we have a couple of different file hashes to work with. And then here, I'm actually sending this to another story to be analyzed and reviewed to keep it very clean and very concise within this story on what it's actually doing, and then sending to a sub story to do further analysis and dive into and provide results and information back to the analysts, or enrich the ticket even further to provide what detail we need at that point. Do you have any sent to story actions or similar workflows that you have built out in your tenant, Will?
Yeah, it's a little bit simpler, but we're just doing some regex on like some keywords like Cisco or Microsoft or Red Hat. Super basic so far, but that is a strong indicator of which of our internal IT operations teams should be getting the particular message. We also regex for like CVE numbers and do a lookup to grab specifically remediation information about that particular CVE if the US cert alert is for a vulnerability that has a CVE. So we're sort of in, oh, you're already doing that there. There you go.
Yep. Yeah, very, very similar, and actually very useful. So down here, we're taking a look at search for CVE, and again, one of those useful templates that's immediately available to us just by using this left-hand navigation window. In this particular story, what I'm doing is not only creating the JIRA ticket, which we'll dive into, but I'm taking a look at the CVSS score and then using trigger conditions to kick off and create different workflows and forks within, or tines within my story to trigger either different actions, like again, this sent to story for any CVSS score above 6.5, just by doing a simple rule defining the type, the field, and the value. And that value that I'm looking for is greater than or equal to 6.5. And then again, just calling that specific path, making it very simple, very easy to repeat and copy over to then take whatever actions downstream I would like. So if we go into this JIRA ticket here, pull up one of our Atlassian issues, just by typing in issue, we have a number of these already pre-built. So again, if we are new to this story and we wanted to add new information in, get issues, update information within the ticket itself, all of that is available to us here. We can drag and drop that over. Again, in my events section, it's going to specifically tell me the demo key in which to go and review for this information. So if I go over to my demo board here, we'll now see this issue and pull one up. And in this particular case, I've gone ahead and I've enriched this ticket. I've created a data table. I've added a link directly to the CISO alert that I'm pulling in here, and it just happens to be one around Pulse Connect secure vulnerabilities. It's funny that you mentioned you're looking for certain things, Will, around Microsoft or Red Hat. I tried to get a little fancy in preparing for this webinar, looking for and kicking off searches in a SIM for Pulse Connect, but I figured I'd just keep it simple and extract out all the CVE information in here, and really a lot of the good rich data that's in here as well. and just add that directly into my ticket. Oh, there we go, lost my spot. And then here again, I have that data table. I have the GUID information, the published date of when it was first out here. And then I've also added in the description. And then down in the comments section, I've gone ahead and added in all of the CVEs as well, just in a nice, neat JSON format. So that way I can go ahead and reference that or use that information later on as a reference point to do some additional analysis, or as Will had mentioned, just have that tight ticket available, send it off to the appropriate analysts or users to go and review and do what they need to do with that information as well. How does this ticket look compared to you, Will? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that looks great. And it seems like such a small thing to just auto create Jira tickets, but like it's so powerful. Like no analyst, InfoSec, non-InfoSec, whatever, nobody likes creating a Jira story. So having a technology that can just do the basic of making a Jira story is a big win. And for the story to be enriched with all the right information, pulled from multiple different data sources, is extremely powerful.
Yep. And a quick little tip for anyone that's out there wondering how you can get those very nice formatted tickets. When I first started, I was wondering the same thing. So if you just quickly do get issue in Jira, I'll drag and drop that over. We already have the resource information. Again, going back to the beginning, I can just call my domain, and then I'm just going to hard code that key in there. Have my Jira user. And make sure we have the correct username, correct credentials, and then we'll just do a quick little run. And now if I want to see what that information looks like in the format for Jira, I can go ahead and pull in all that field information from the description and then just use that as references down the road. So when I'm building those data tables, double pipe, value, the stars mean bold, same right here, double pipe, and then end it, and then start to fill in our information as well, and as what's needed to properly enrich that ticket and make use of it. Great, and then let's go ahead and take a look at that Slack message that we received as well. So this is what I'm getting when I send out a Slack notification using the Times bot. We do have documentation and really good blog posts step-by-step that walks through how to get this created. But I've just done something really simple where I have my link, my published date, the Jira ticket immediately available to go ahead and call, and then the creator of that alert. So similar to Will's process where they're using Times as that listener, I can define within Slack who the listener was that the Times was looking to receive information from, so that way users know exactly what's going on. And then I can add prompts to acknowledge and assign the ticket to myself, and then immediately have validation here from the Times platform that I did take ownership, and that's now being run and monitored by me or other users on the team. And again, properties for that specific action itself, all available within the platform. It's just a matter of updating the specific channel information and then calling the right JSON path to enrich that notification as well. And then adding in prompts that are specific to Times, allowing you to take that action, whether it's through Slack or even email or any other system as well. So if we wanted to add those prompts into the Jira ticket, we could certainly do that as well for acknowledgement or kicking off another story within Times at that point. And then the last final pieces that we have here, again, we're kicking off that search in the CVE Circle Loo API. And then I have those two triggers down here looking for either in, and then again, like Will had mentioned, this one's looking for anything Pulse Connect similar to Microsoft or Red Hat. And we're just defining that specific path. And then this one is going ahead and again, any CVSS score that's above 6.5 or equal to 6.5, it's going to go ahead and send that to another story to start running searches in our SIM solution, whether it's Splunk, Sumo Logic, Elasticsearch, or even BigQuery, like Will and his team are using to go ahead and get that information immediately available to us. So Will, with the story that I've built out and the process that you and your team have in place today, what do you think are some key takeaways for the folks listening on the call, and something you wish you knew before Tines, or I guess after Tines was implemented?
Yeah, I think that some key takeaways, and we're still relatively new to Tines. We just started playing with it like in December, and I feel pretty mature about working with Tines these days. It is an investment in time to like get everything set up and fully understand how Tines works and get the right resources and credentials, and just shift your thinking. I think that would be applicable to using any type of automation or SOAR type tool, but it is a really great investment in time. The amount of time my team spends looking at this data set, copying one piece of information, pasting in another data set, copying that, and doing all that enrichment, like it's just gone to zero for those two workflows. And we've got all sorts of great ideas for other work flows where we can just not have to worry about that data enrichment, just tell Tines how to do it, and let Tines do its magic. So it is an investment in time. It's not a silver bullet that just out of the box is going to solve all your problems for you, but it is an investment, and it has certainly paid off for us. And the other big time improvement is we're getting alerts and notifications to a point where InfoSec doesn't even need to look at some of these alerts, especially as I mentioned for the US cert. We're enriching the JIRA tickets enough so that our endpoints management or Windows or Linux admin type groups have all the information they need to understand the InfoSec perspective of the risk and their recommended remediation activities, and just go solve these tickets on their own. So that's been another huge time savings for us.
Yeah, awesome. And speaking of time saving, if we go into story runs here, we can see and we can immediately understand, how long that whole process took for us. So, while we have 130 events and 13 actions, that's 130 times that we checked, or 130 times, that we checked, because that's about how many times I tested this out, to make sure that we're pulling in the right information and how many events have actually been emitted for those 13 actions. So taking things, where Will was talking about the GCP health analytics from weeks, maybe months, down to a few seconds, a few minutes, having it being managed by Tines is an extreme value add and huge benefit for a lot of the workflows. Now, while this is focused on academic institutions, and Will running the team at Broad around this and managing this, Will, can you speak to, this isn't just any use case that's specific to academic institutions, pulling down vulnerabilities and understanding that information. It really speaks to any industry or any vertical that's looking to automate something similar.
Yeah, I think so, definitely. We have found a lot of value at the Broad because we're a very decentralized organization. The Broad itself is made up of many different labs and departments and groups, and each lab and department and group has IT technologies that are supported by the IT team, but they've got a lot of control over how they manage those systems. So there's key pieces of information sort of scattered all across multiple data repositories. I suspect that in other more mature organizations, they can be more prescriptive about asset inventory control and asset tracking and have that information in one spot. Tines would still probably be very useful there, but it's especially useful for us because that data enrichment piece, finding the right information in all these pockets, was a very time-consuming effort that Tines just excels at doing for us.
Awesome. Great. Well, with that, I think we'll open it up for questions and see if there's anything particular folks would like to ask Will or myself. I'm sure we'll provide a lot better insight and detail than I can, but I want to thank everyone for the time today and really looking forward to interacting with your questions. And we'll be following up with a short blog post as well as an export of this story. So anybody that wants to go to tines.io, tines.com and sign up for a community edition account and start working with the platform, you can immediately take this story here, upload it into your Tines tenant, and then start to do something very similar to what Will and his team are doing, and the approach that I tried to recreate and put together for our talk today. So thanks everyone again. And Will, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. And we look forward to filling in your questions now.